Get Felcha. Welcome to the Village Oak Tree for today. It's October 2nd, 2024. I'm your host, Terrence O'Donnell, and I appreciate you joining me once again. Today, I've got a return guest, ASM Esquire, whom I interviewed back in March. And we did his previous book about debunking the Bible, which was pretty good. Now he's got a book, poetry out with a bunch of famous writers in it. Some of them going back a long ways, a couple hundred years or more. And the book is entitled Love Poems for Men. So let's bring him up here. Mr. ASM Esquire, welcome back.
Thank you, Terry. Peace be upon you. Assalamu alaikum. Shalom alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Thank you.
So let's kind of go with your book. First off, let me pull your book up and let's show everybody what it looks like. This is what it looks like. Okay, go to Amazon. Tell me, is it for sale anywhere else besides Amazon?
Currently, it's on Amazon only, from what I know.
Okay.
It's moving on to some other markets like Barnes and Noble's, Kobo, and as you know, it's a #1 national bestseller in paid books.
Okay. Well, that's good. So, tell me, one of the things I caught in the back of your book, when you were talking about yourself a little bit, is you consider yourself a son of Abraham rather than a Muslim, Christian, or a Jew. So tell me a little bit about that.
Thank you. That's an excellent question. And I emphasize that my ethnicity, I'm a maternal, paternal descendant of Abraham, both lines. And what's important about that right now is that bloodline is being used to justify racism and now even a Holocaust and a genocide in the Holy Land, and to desecrate the Holy Land, which the Abrahamic bloodline would never do.
Right.
At least the sane ones amongst us. And so I emphasize that the Abrahamic bloodline, maternally, paternally, the ethnic blood of Abraham, denounces violence, stands for world peace, and believes the teachings of Islam, and I wish I could say Judaism, Christianity, that there's not superiority of one race over another, that all of us are the children of Adam and Eve, and that God made no mistake when he made Werner Goeth from Germany an intellectual among his peers. God made no mistakes when he made LeBron James, et cetera, et cetera. So I mentioned my ethnicity because some Christians today, not all, and some Jews today, not all, believe that they are on the quote unquote covenant of Abraham, and that justifies them being superior to other races. The world all over witnesses the beating down of African Americans, just beating down their souls on CNN and Fox News. People in Japan, in the Middle East, and Persia, in Western Europe, Eastern Europe, watch this display of Fox News wanting to use the N-word and things like that. And so this is very, very despicable to beat down the human soul. Islam is pretty clear that that is not allowed, that we are children of Adam and Eve, and Jesus doesn't support that. Jesus separates himself from the Jew-Gentile narrative and brings in the Greeks and converts Greeks and starts his own new religion. So it's really just a political phenomenon of racism, and that's why I mentioned my ethnicity. And just to establish that, no, we do not believe that there's a racist covenant of Abraham. We do not ascribe to that part of the Bible. That is covered in the other book that you had me on the past podcast for, which is Final Bible Study by ASM Esquire, which is also a national bestseller, number 19 in New Theology as of April. And thousands of people have read that book. And there are people in my ethnicity that are good people, and there are people in my ethnicity that should be locked up and have the key thrown away. And the people who are promoting this narrative are not my household. They are not ethnically of Abraham. The Israelis, from what we know, from what I know, correct me if I'm wrong, are from the USSR. They changed their names. You can Google the name Benjamin Netanyahu and see where he's actually from, what his real name is. So they're putting on this phony, fake persona, this mask, and they're parading themselves around in this costume that they are the bloodline of Abraham, and they are not. And they're using my household to justify killing innocent Palestinians, conducting a Holocaust, a genocide, in order to privatize the commons, in order to, and by privatize the commons, I mean invade Vietnam, for example, to get rubber for Goodyear, to invade Iraq to secure the southern oil fields. And what these people do is they take huge mountains because they contain lithium and say this belongs to us, and the locals will say no, it does not. And then boom, here comes the F-15s. They start killing poor people. They start killing villagers. They're these despicable financial businessmen, and they're using they're not going to be used there. I will not allow them to use the Abrahamic faith or the Abrahamic household or the Abrahamic bloodline to justify their despicable crimes. They should all be in jail, in my opinion. And karma is real, and the God of Abraham has promised to defeat them. So that's why I mentioned my ethnicity. Not to be too long-winded, but you have Jay-Z, a famous hip hopper, rap artist, celebrity,
Mhm.
and he says he's a Hebrew, and he is not of
What?
the Abrahamic bloodline. Yes, and both of his parents are African American. More recently, we have Tom Brady, a ball deflator, a disgrace to his Scandinavian roots, saying that he's Hebrew, that he's Jewish,
What?
and both of his parents, yes, both of his parents are 100% Scandinavian. So, yeah, and then there's a tribe in Nepal that says they're the lost tribe mentioned in the Bible, and
The
there's
13th
no
tribe?
indication, not a thread of truth in that.
Yeah, I'm
And
not surprised.
so
That's
what
great.
they're doing, the worst of all is there's a lot of the Israelis, from what we know, is that they're people from the USSR, ethnically from the USSR, saying that they're the bloodline of the Mesopotamian Bedouin Jacob, son of Isaac, son of Abraham, son of Terah or Azarah, whichever narrative you choose. And they're not. So that's why I mentioned my ethnicity, because my ethnicity pretty unanimously stands for world peace, stands for an end to killing third world people for money, stands for feeding people, and takes a very radical extremist position of feeding hungry children even in third world countries, and takes the radical position of reviving the endangered species, and takes the radical position of having peace on earth again. So
Mhm.
my ethnic bloodline supports peaceful people like Bernie Sanders, peaceful people like Greta Thunberg, peaceful people like Amy Goodman, like Jill Stein, like Dr. Cornel West, like so many imams, like Rabbi Jacob Weiss, whose Facebook account was blocked because he said there will never be world peace until Israel is peacefully dismantled.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
these days,
yeah,
if you say anything bad about Israel, your social media gets shut down quickly. Um,
real quick.
here in the United States, I had a post here on YouTube that got pulled right quickly because I started talking about the COVID pandemic and how it's not over with, and they got all upset with me about that. It's like, okay, so you got to be careful here in the United States, and I've mentioned this several times that the First Amendment right that we had to free speech in the United States, yeah, well, that went away a long time ago. You can have free speech as long as you talk about what the government approves you to talk about. And a good example is all these students on the college campuses last spring, and the ones that are starting up again here this fall. They're getting shut down by the authoritarian campus police and the administrators for doing anything in public about being pro-Palestinian. And you can see it going on right now. USC has turned their campus into basically a fortress with armed police, massive screening for people trying to get on campus. Columbia, New York is doing the same thing. Even though they got a new administrator, they haven't changed policies. And I'm sure there's probably several other campuses around the country that are doing the same thing. So, the question is, and I got this from an opinion piece out of Al Jazeera here last week. And this man wrote a piece about how all these campuses here in the United States are, clamping down, restricting this and that and every other thing. And to me, that's like, well, all right. First of all, you're violating, free speech. Uh, and then, the freedom of the press in the United States has been largely choked off for at least 20 years or more. I know reporters back in 22 years ago that told me that, and I've watched it take place here even recently. So, all of that's going away here in the United States. So I kind of asked
Right.
myself, where are we headed with all of this?
Right. So
It
we know,
doesn't look
and
good.
to augment that is, we know that shortly after 9/11, there's a lot of opinions about what happened. The U.S. Patriot Act was very contentiously and under a lot of resistance was passed, which allowed for the surveillance of Americans, the loss of free speech and things like that. And
Yeah.
a lot of the restrictions were lifted for media to be purchased. So even the local newspapers were purchased. We know there's about five companies, really just five men, in my opinion, that own the media of, a lot of conventional media outlets. And to say anything against their position is, they try to say, you're going to invite trouble. I don't believe that anyone can harm or benefit me except my higher power. So I don't fear 5'6" men. I don't fear putting Israelis in jail for crimes that are criminal acts according to the ICJ, according to the United Nations, according to U.S. law, according to U.S. foreign policy, according to et cetera, et cetera. So when they violate the crimes, I believe that this 5'6" man should be thrown in a jail cell, put before a judge, and given the chance to defend his position. And so why everybody is supporting these thugs is just baffles my mind. So I studied Harvard University. I studied advanced, for differential equations, things like that. I'm certified in those. I completed my undergrad though at a state college. I'm happy I did. And I mean, we've seen for the longest time how people like Dr. Cornel West and so many people that speak the truth and speak what a lot of Americans are feeling are suppressed on the media. And Rabbi Jacob Weiss is not doctor, but Rabbi Jacob Weiss is going all around the world doing interviews, and they're not showing up in American outlets, and it's a disgrace. And 5,000 Israelis protested this Holocaust that the USSR, who took Jerusalem, Netanyahu and these scum who took Jerusalem by force, illegally, through killing, and these scum, these enemies of Moses, these enemies of Jesus, these enemies of Muhammad, these enemies of the God of Abraham, these criminals who are looting and plundering the Holy Land, are considered legally immune. So they are not. They believe they are not subjected to law and order. They are not ethnically of Abraham, by the way, and that's one of the things I emphasized. We talked about in the beginning, and the suppression of college students is a very, very red flag warning trigger of a dictatorship coming our way. God forbid, unless we do something. And when there's usually a legally immune power that you can't jail, then what usually ensues after that is a loyalist type party that tried to win favor with this dictator. And really, that's the only way to move up in society. So it's not about talent anymore. It's not about skill, intellect, competency, capability, human endeavor. It's all about whether Pol Pot is happy with you or not, or whether Joseph Stalin is happy with you or not. And if he's not, he kills 1 million people. Pol Pot killed 100,000 people. These despicable people are more dangerous than scorpions and tigers and sharks. So these beasts, in my opinion, should be jailed. And that is my position. And ultimately, from my reading of Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and I've completed the courses for those at Harvard, and I'm certified in Christianity. Means almost nothing to have that qualification. All of my study was done independently, majority of it, and the book Final Bible Study by ASM Esquire, mostly is from independent study. And it's permanently established that this is a book that's written by men who possibly had schizophrenia and said this is how the world was made and this is when the flood happened, and it is not true. It just doesn't. A Palestinian carpenter named Jesus of Galilee, who was a Middle Eastern dark-skinned man of Jewish ethnicity because he was the house of David and lived near the equator, did not create the solar system 6,000 years ago. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry to inform you.
Yeah.
Christianity, sorry. And that's not all Christians. Some Christians are waking up. So
Yeah. They are a little bit. So
hopefully.
tell me about this book a little bit here. What made you put it together?
So in reality, I'm not this heated political commentator, and I'm a scholar in my opinion, not because I'm intelligent or something like that, but just like Luka Doncic plays basketball full time, so he's a basketball player. So I read, study, and I'm asked to research a lot full time, and so my real aim of scholarship is not to talk about Donald Trump's butt crack and all that stuff. The real aim of scholarship is to reach a highly refined point of intellect,
Mhm.
and culture and civility and ethics. And so Love Poems for Men is a compilation from very, very um, senior intellectuals from Germany, from India, from the Middle East, from Judea, from America, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a compilation of Werner Goeth from Germany, from Edgar Allan Poe from Boston, from Rumi, and from Persia, and he's actually from Eurasia, he's from Cappadocia, but Eastern Europe, but Turkey, and Omar Khayyam from Persia and Saudi. No, I didn't include Saudi, but uh, has the quatrains of Holly and things like that. And so it's meant to just be a really uplifting book. It's master's level English, so majority of books, some writers are advised to write at the 8th grade level, so it's accessible because roughly 60% of the U.S. reads at a 6th to 8th grade level. But
That's true.
it just skips formality. Um, and it's a master's level English proficiency. So it's a real enjoyable read for a lot of people. I haven't heard anything negative about it, and it's a pretty safe book. I mean, it doesn't really talk about any religion or any political
No.
position. It's just meant to be an intellectually inspiring thing. It's a compilation of different ethnicities, different religious backgrounds, just to appreciate the quatrain form of poetry. That's really all it is.
Okay. Well, that's good. So you said it's a national bestseller now?
It's a number one national bestseller on Amazon in paid books. So I took screenshots of that, um, and it's not hard to look up. If you go on Amazon, you can scroll to the bottom; it'll tell us
Sure.
bestsellers rank. I think the most recent bestseller rank of it was like number 3 that I saw. So by now it may have fell off a cliff, but thousands of people are reading this book, and really happy about it. And the reviews are never indicative of a bestseller on Amazon. And I don't know why. I think Amazon blocks some reviews, or I don't know what the book review. But you'll get a lot of bestsellers that only have like 3 reviews or 2 reviews or 13 reviews. But all the reviews I have are 5-star. It's a 5-star book. So
That's good. That's good. Yeah, I mean, I read through it, and there's a lot of some of those poems I actually remember reading from years ago. Um,
oh,
so I thought, wow, and I was always a big Edgar Allan Poe foe. Um, so I read a lot of his stories more than his poetry, but I have read his poetry in the past as well. Um, but it's all very good, and you're right. It does read kind of at a higher level of understanding. So yeah, most Americans probably would dismiss this saying, yeah, not for me. We're not going to read that. Um, they're still at the Dick and Jane level. Um, unfortunately. And that's, to me, that's a byproduct of one, the way the public education system in the United States is degraded itself due to politics in a lot of ways, unfortunately. And now we got all these gun-toting idiots running around out here, and named Bubba and Joe, saying, "Yep, it's my right to carry a gun, and you can't stop me. I can do whatever I want to." The Second Amendment says I can do whatever I want to. I'm like, no, I'm sorry. You need to actually read it. Okay. I wrote something here a while back, about a year and a half ago, that talked about the Second Amendment. And if you actually go in and read it, the whole thing, if you read the whole thing, it says you can carry a weapon if you're part of a militia. Well, you know what? Here in the United States, the militias, they're called the National Guard these days. Okay. That is the official militia of every state. So if you want to join the National Guard, they'll be more than happy to sign you up and send you to school. You can learn how to shoot a gun and be proficient in it and all that kind of good stuff. Um, and if you don't want to do that, you don't want to wear a uniform, and you want to be part of a homegrown militia. Well, that's all well and good. See, but the problem is the states don't sponsor those kinds of things for obvious reasons because they're not safe. Okay, I'm sorry.
What's great about that is, yeah, so 6th to 8th grade reading level, and uh, the target audience of this is it. It can include Bubba. I want to, I'd love to not indoctrinate, but I'd love to take Bubba to a higher
Educator.
plane of understanding, and tell him not to run around in his underwear with a gun,
Yeah.
and to put on clothes and try driving a Corolla instead of a truck all the time. And I'd like to you know teach him about Islam and Christian and the historical Jesus
Oh
and
man. Whoa. No.
Moses.
That's not going to work. All these guys that are supporting Trump and the MAGA cult, they're not going to have anything to do with Islam. Um, And the only reason the only ones in that group that would tolerate the Jews are the ones that are going to the Christian churches, and the pastors are standing up there and saying, "Hey, you need to support the Zionists." I'm like, yeah, and not all the Christian churches in this country are doing that. So it's kind of a catch. It's kind of a catch-all. I don't know.
I
It's
signed up
it's
for I signed up for the U.S. Army when I was 16. My uncle Faisey's 5-star general, U.S. Army, born in the 1920s. I'm more American than Donald Trump and probably 99.99% of MAGA. And
yeah.
if they want to read the book, it's on Amazon. And I don't know, maybe they just grew up that way, but you know, uh, they might enjoy this lifestyle. That there is more to life than you know. You know, a bologna sandwich, and there are, so, uh, about Trump, Trump's interesting. Trump is not a rural American. So a lot of my guys are voting for Trump. They're very open about that. And they believe he's the only leader in the race. They think, Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, and Joe Biden are just wooden boards that my 5'6" brethren, rabbi, will tell them what to do, where to move the troops, will command the generals, will command the admirals, will command the intelligence forces, and this 5'6" brethren of mine, in the foreseeable future, will use it for evil to kill people or cause more havoc on Earth. But Trump actually has some vitality,
Yeah.
and so that's their argument. I'm not sure it's a good argument. I don't know. I don't like the two-party system. I don't like two-party system at all. I think Jill Stein is going to get my vote. If Dr. Cornel West was still in the race, he'd get my vote. Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks TYT would get my vote. If Bernie Sanders ran, he would get my vote, because these people have a conscience. They're intellectuals. They're scholars. And I think if MAGA was to watch them and learn from them, they would just get bored. I don't know if they have the capacity to benefit from them. Whereas Trump, he just, if he gets, like he brings Hulk Hogan to the RNC and he rips off his shirt, and that's probably going to get him 1 million votes from MAGA. If he was to bring the Kool-Aid Man and jump through a wall and say, "Oh yeah," then, or one of the Ninja Turtles, to endorse Trump, MAGA, he would probably increase his poll rating. Whereas one of the good things about Kamala Harris and Waltz and Biden, these people who have been criticized, being hollow, they're just career ambition people. They're not standing for any high moral ground or any, morality or ethics. They're just feeding into the crappy narrative of, a bunch of mafia thugs that are killing people for money in Jerusalem, desecrating the Holy Land, and using 1 billion, Christians to do it. And it's just definitely not all Christians. It's just the ones, around me that believe that a Palestinian carpenter born in Galilee and Bethlehem, from Galilee, born in Bethlehem, this dark-skinned equator man who was of Jewish ethnicity from the house of David, created the solar system 6,000 years ago. So these level of Christians, not the Dr. John Brown and Dr. Barty Ehrman. I don't think he's Christian, from UC Chapel Hill and so many others, and so yeah, MAGA's I don't know what to do. I mean, what can you do? There's this MAGA, they're this drunken crowd, and on December 25th, they're gonna celebrate Jesus' birthday with Clydesdale horses and Budweiser, and they're all gonna get drunk and say it's in the name of the God Jesus, and God forbid. And Jesus never said he's God. Jesus never says he
Now,
created the solar system. He's just this innocent, pious, devout
now
man sent
it
to the
was the
gallows.
It was the Romans who gave him that, that moniker, just to
Oh,
avoid a civil war. But that's a whole
yeah.
nother animal, But
Yes, yes, spot on, spot on.
the big thing about it here is that Trump, everybody has to understand about Donald Trump. He doesn't do anything unless there's a payday. And that's what I keep telling people. He wrote that, well, he had somebody write the book for him, but he put his name on it. The Art of the Deal. Okay.
Yeah,
That's his Bible. Okay. And you have to, if you understand that, you understand Donald Trump. Okay.
yeah.
So
So Art of the Deal is a great example. So again, a lot of my guys voting for Trump. I'm on the fence, and honestly, I don't like the two-party system. AIPAC swept the primaries.
yeah,
I don't know what's going to happen. So anyway, uh,
well, that's
uh,
all about
about Art of the Deal, it's been called Art of the Steal because when Tony Schwartz was his ghostwriter, was paid $250,000 in the '80s to write Art of the Deal, uh, he was supposed to receive royalties for it. He later said that it was the greatest regret of his life. ABC News did a report on that, and the Random House publisher uh, who published it said that Trump did not write any part of the book.
nope.
And then Trump, I think, settled with him out of court or something to say he wanted to take away his royalties. And Tony Schwartz said it was the worst decision of his life, and he only did it to get the money for financial motive. Period.
Right. Right.
So, and so we can talk about Trump. So he has 6 bankruptcies. He's
He's a crook.
sued he sued a Native American tribe in Catskills, New York, because they wanted to put up a casino, which they have every right to do. But he felt it would get in the way of his now bankrupt holdings in Atlantic City when the
Yep.
gambling opened up in New Jersey, as you know. And so we said that if he can't run a lemonade stand, why are you going to put him in charge of nukes? Why are you going to put him in charge of the army, make him commander in chief? I'll tell you a little bit, scrolling my notes. So, oh yeah, and we're just getting started. We don't want to talk about Trump. So,
Well, the big thing is we could go down a really deep hole with him. Um, he learned how to be a crook from his dad. And I remember him in the 60s, and I remember especially when he was in the 70s, and I've read nothing but, bad stuff about him. And then he became president in 2016. And I thought to myself, how in the world did that happen? But still,
so
it
he
is what it is.
you're the expert here, and you know the politics like the back of your hand. And I'm just brought into this because this election is so dangerous.
Well,
And
that's just it. And we lead up to the point now. I mean, Biden was elected in 2020 simply because they wanted to beat Donald Trump flat out. And so it happened. That's all well and great. Okay. But what did we get the last 4 years? Well, the first couple of years weren't too bad. The first 2 years, they actually tried to actually do a few things. Congress beat them up as hard as they could, but they still managed to get a couple of things done. The last 2 years, everybody's been shaking their heads like, well, what happened? Well, I can tell you what happened. Joe Biden did a Ronald Reagan. Okay. He started getting dementia and everybody hid it from everybody, just like they did Ronald Reagan in his last year and a half. And other people started running the government. So now you got Blinken, Sullivan, and what's the other guy? The three of them. I call them the Three Stooges. And they're the ones who are actually running the government right now and have been for a while. And that's
certainly,
why, why we are in such a mess over in the Middle East. And this whole business with Ukraine. It's like I did a commentary podcast here yesterday and posted it. And I'll kind of repeat myself a little bit here very briefly. That about a week and a half ago, we almost went to nuclear global war simply because Biden was getting ready to put his name on a piece of paper that would have authorized Ukrainians to fire English and American missiles deep into Russia. And Russia said flat out, if that happens, we're going to declare war on NATO. And guess what? None of you people are going to be unscathed. And so the deal is, a lot of people don't understand how this all works out. So it's like this. Back in World War II, the United States sat real pretty. The closest we came to World War II was Pearl Harbor got bombed. Okay. But other than that, the United States was relatively unscathed. All right.
exactly.
So we've been riding on those laurels for 50, for 80 years. Well, guess what? Russia flat out said this time, well, you ain't going to get away with it this time. If we declare war on NATO, the United States is going to see a bunch of its cities get bombed flat out. Well, you know what? The generals in the Pentagon took that pretty seriously. So, this a week ago last Friday, the generals basically told the White House, said, we are not going to sign off on this deal. You cannot fire those missiles. You need to tell, Keir Starmer, the deal is the Americans are not doing it flat out. That's the only thing that saved us. Okay.
So that's an amazing story. I'm hearing that for the first time. And I know that the aggressor in this whole Russia-Ukraine war is whatever forces are behind Ukraine, because there was a coup, a soft coup in 2018. And the Russian Cultural Center in Ukraine has historically been Russian and culturally Russian and throughout history. Et cetera, et cetera. I won't go into that. But Donbass is a Russian cultural center, and people in Donbass were harassed. And basically the Russian culture was being wiped out and threatened. And Ukraine was the aggressor here, and from my reading, and not Russia. And another thing is, Donald, if I may, Donald Trump is party to this. This whole claim that he made the country safer and is BS. It's just a lie. He does what's called a lie avalanche. Mehdi Hassan, in the book How to Win Every Argument bestseller, he mentions that he gives the example, the transcript basically, that in a 2-minute speech, Donald Trump told a lie every 9 seconds. And what that does is the other guy has to fuss around and say, and fact check. And it takes 2 hours to fact check him. But now people are wised up to that. And we saw that in the debate with Kamala Harris, that, she basically, she's a former DA of California, and she prosecuted him like a criminal. And in February 2019, Donald Trump began the process of withdrawal from the INF treaty. As you may know, it calls for unilateral disarmament, quote unquote. Of course, that doesn't happen. But the INF was pretty much dismantled by Donald Trump. It's the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty. It was signed by the Soviet Union, United States in '87, as you know better than me. and it allows 1,846 nukes for Russia and 846 for the U.S. at that time. And that Russia agreed. This was a big thing, that they would not develop any ground launched missiles with a range of 500 kilometers or more. It was a milestone in the Cold War,
Mhm.
and because of MAD and all that stuff. So, and then and this came after the Alcatraz Bay of Pigs and Cuba and Venezuela, as you know better
Yeah.
than me. Another thing Trump said Trump said is that, quote unquote, I don't care what happens in Ukraine. And that's not the language anyone expects to hear from a commander in chief.
No.
So, and it was stated, he said that in 2022 in an interview with Steve Bannon. And he's just, and that if anyone wants to read more about that, you can read it in RT.com and Russian Times, Atomic Threat. Here's how Trump is to blame for the world being on the brink of nuclear war. Trump is a lot of my guys are voting for Trump, but he's been described as you know better than me, as a quote unquote loose cannon.
Yep.
And you just don't know what he's going to do. And he's asked if he has a plan. He says, I have. They've been iterating that 1,000 times on the news, that he has concepts of a plan. He's not ready. He's not ready to lead.
No.
He called a dead 5-year POW in Vietnam, Senator Republican John McCain, a loser.
Yep.
He called dead Americans who had died in war losers and suckers, quote unquote. Donald Trump. Anyone's welcome to Google that if you think I'm politicking here and
The
not
thing is,
true.
he goes back a long ways, and of course, there was that famous incident where the disabled veteran came out to do the national anthem, and he didn't want to be didn't want to be seen with the guy,
Mhm.
all that stuff. But
Because
the
he
big
was an
thing is,
amputee.
the United States pushed a coup in 2014 in Ukraine. Zelensky got elected, and Obama basically, and this is one of the biggest things I had against him, is when Russia come in and invaded Ukraine, or the Crimean Peninsula, and took it over. Obama spanked him on and said, "Oh, you can't do that, whine, whine, whine," but he never did much beyond that. And so it happened, and they've been there ever since. And you're right about the Donbass; it's primarily Russian ethnic Russians. They prefer to be Russian, and so on and so forth. But Ukrainians are like, oh no, no. But Ukrainians have had a thing about the Russians for like, you know, years and years and years and decades and decades. So that's no real surprise. The big thing right now is that throwing long range destructive missiles deep into Russia, Russia has said that is the line. We are prepared. So well, and it's another one of those. One of my previous podcasts, I told the world, not that anybody's listening, that you have to understand. Back a few months ago, when the Russians were parading their ships and their one submarine down at Havana Harbor, well, you got to know that that was just for show. Okay. The rest of the fleet was sitting off the coast where you can't find them. And that's one of the things that Americans think that, oh, we're so great. We got the best Navy. We got the best Army. No, you don't. Not anymore. Okay. The Chinese have the largest Navy in the world. They have the largest, infantry divisions, total amount of soldiers on the ground. The Russians are not that far behind. They don't have that big a navy, but their navy is a lot more technologically proficient. They have better
Yeah.
missiles. They got better submarines, all that kind of stuff. But you can't tell any of the Americans that. They don't want to listen. Well, no, we're still the best. We're still the best. I'm sorry. I served in America's military. I'm
Thank you.
telling you straight up, no, we do not. Okay.
These are huge blunders, and the graduates of West Point are probably applying to be citizens of other countries or something, because to just illustrate that, 2024, a NATO member asked Trump, if we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us? Trump, quote unquote, says, no, I would not protect you.
Right.
In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. Trump, quote unquote. So the threat to national security, again, a lot of my guys are voting for him. So the NATO consists of 31 states, 32 counting Sweden, which joined in 2024. NATO spent $1.26 trillion on defense in 2023, and the U.S. paid 2/3 of that.
Yeah.
So the other members of NATO, Trump calls them delinquent, and
Right.
he has this really demeaning. He's not really winning friends, and so Jens Stoltenberg, UN Secretary General, about Trump, she said that the general said any suggestion that, quote unquote, any suggestion that allies will not defend each other undermines all of our security and puts
Right.
American, European soldiers at increased risk, where everybody's at risk already. So Trump is really, all he's really doing is, he's just putting on a big show, like a big, mega event. And he gets, all these, drunk MAGA, stumbling into the polls to voting for him,
The
and
thing is, it's not just Trump, though. See, and that's why I say it doesn't really matter who's in charge of the government, because right
sure.
now, and this is an article I picked out of CBC out of Canada last week, um, and it's not the first article that I've seen on this, is that Canada right now is being severely pressured by Washington, D.C. to spend their 2% mandated NATO GDP for their military. And the Canadians are saying, well, no, we don't have the money for that right now. Maybe by 2030. And this was a news report that I read a couple months ago. But now the United States is pressuring them again, saying, hey, no, we need you to spend that money. We're gonna push you. You need to spend that money. And no matter what, Canada's saying, hey, look, we don't have that kind of money to throw around. Okay. We're not ready. You need to back
Mhm.
off. Well, I say that, but the Canadians are not, they're not telling the United States that we're going to back off. They're trying to figure out how they're going to find the money to up the game to the 2%, all because Washington says so. The Canadians are afraid of Washington D.C. Okay.
I want What you're saying is correct, and it's not just Trump. And yes, definitely made it sound that way, and that's not my position. And so I want to just really remind all the viewership that this war is to privatize the commons. This war is because there are financial
Yeah.
gains for a few families that is most likely not the predominant families of the world. This war is a corporate enterprise, and these people are
Yeah.
killing innocent poor people in third world countries and violating ICJ laws, violating UN laws blatantly, claiming that they're children of God or that they're legally immune, and all this garbage. And this war is for the financial gain of a very few people. And those people, 60 years from now, 100 years from now, are all going to be dead. So
Right.
as the appeal of people like myself and yourself also, who want world peace and who want to revive the endangered species and who want a healthy ozone and who want safe food and safe clean drinking water and a good earth, a good planet earth, scientific people, world peace people like yourself and I, I want to remind everybody that these are not wars about God and Jesus, and
Now,
that those people are being manipulated. And if there's any doubt, read Final Bible Study by AMS Esquire, number 19,
well,
nationally in theology.
if you have any doubt, just listen to Lindsey Graham get on national television. Okay, him and Tom Cotton both are right at the top of the list, but they're by no means the only two. But Lindsey Graham came right out and said a couple of times on a couple of like Fox News and CNN and all that that the United States needs to go in there and get the Russians out of Ukraine so that we can get in there and dig up all their lithium and nickel and all the other stuff because it's worth trillions. I mean, when you're telling the American public that this is why we're really pushing this war, and you're saying this in public, I mean, that tells you right there what the real reason is behind what's going on over there. And of course,
And
he's all about selling out the Ukrainians to the Americans in the West. He doesn't care because he's getting paid.
they're getting paid. And um, I've got my Trump notes open, but yeah, Biden and Waltz and Kamala Harris, they're directly responsible. Blinken, General Mattis, Petraeus, all these, may I say it, slaves of my 5'6" rabbi brethren, right? These wooden boards, okay, these minions, they don't care about the ideals. They don't care about God. They don't care about the Holy Quran. They don't care about Jesus. They don't care about Moses. They want money and they want food. You know, they want to enjoy life for, you know, whatever short term they have on earth. They're not people who are concerned with refined higher order moral or ethics. There are leaders who are. Bernie Sanders is a great example.
Yeah.
I want to just mention one example from Trump calling American soldiers quote unquote suckers, quote unquote losers. John Kelly 23 report in the Atlantic. Trump called the Ain Marne, I hope I'm saying that right, it's the French American cemetery in 2018. He wouldn't visit it, and he was president at the time. And there was a ceremony for that occasion. He was asked why he wouldn't go. He said that his helicopter wouldn't fly. Secret Service said that wasn't true. He said he didn't want to get his hair wet.
Yeah.
Pretty noble reason, not to visit people who gave their lives. And so what that was about was 1,800 Marines, as you know better than I, were buried there from the Battle of Belleau Woods near Marne River, near the Marne River in France, 1918, as you know better than I. And he calls them quote unquote losers and quote unquote suckers, and that's why he didn't go. So if you think that Kamala Harris, all these whatever Trump, all these guys really have some high ideals or something. There's a lot of other ways for them to show that rather than kill third world people and countries. Some of these people haven't even seen a television set, and they're being bombed, they're being, kidnapped, they're being killed because they're sitting on lithium or they're sitting on oil.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a really, really despicable thing that these people do, and it just really.
The United States has been famous for that for decades. I mean, there's no deal. They've hit a lot of things. I mean, I used to tell people all the time, and I went to Afghanistan for a year back in 2002, and I got to watch Al Jazeera when we could get a satellite connection on the rare occasion that we did there, and from northeastern Afghanistan, and we would pick up the Arabic channel of Al Jazeera and listen to it. And our biggest thing was when Bush, started the run up to the war. I was still over in Afghanistan, and their biggest thing was that they didn't want the French and the Russians to get all that oil out of Iraq because Saddam Hussein had given the contracts to the French and the Russians, and he wasn't going to let the Americans in. So, the oil barons here in the United States said, "Oh no, we can't have that. We got to find a way to get that oil. We can't let the French and the Russians have it." So that was published over in the Middle East. And of course, in 2003, as we all know, he invaded under false pretenses, and off we went for 20 years. But the real reason was because the oil barons who owned Dick Cheney and George W. Bush flat out said, "No way, Jose, the French and the Russians are not going to get that oil. We have to figure out a way to get it, and we don't care how we do it. Just get it done." And
They were
so,
used to secure the southern oil fields' first objective in Iraq.
right.
9/11, there's a lot of things coming out too in 2001 that so we need to revisit that official story. The official story being that two planes hit the Twin Towers and that killed 3,000 Americans. So we need to revisit that because China and Russia have not been able to breach U.S. airspace for 50 years. And, that box cutter, goat herders were able to do that is pretty unbelievable. Everything said was to be that everything was destroyed except their passports. Another thing is that Louis Pacioli, firefighter, New York, brave firefighter, first responder, said there was bombs in the building. The videos show that the two towers had a pyrite type civil engineering demolition. They imploded. So who would put the bombs in the building? If then the head of the security for the twin towers is Jeb Bush, George Bush's brother. Jeb Bush is the governor of Florida at the time. The name of his company is Securicom. They made a lot of money off of the insurance of the building. And only 2 planes hit the towers. There's actually 3 towers. Tower 7 on the south. Tower 7 also was demolished by demolition. So we don't know who did this. It's the official story is very unbelievable. If you collect the cumulative brain power of the Pentagon, the cumulative intellect brain power study of the universities that support the official story, they believe that a plane vaporizes. And I can introduce any one of them to an 8th grader that can QED demonstrate that no amount of force of a plane hitting a wall or any object, I don't care if it hits plutonium, would it vaporize and turn into thin air. And that is the story that we are expected to believe. So in my study of chemistry, physics, and biology science, that's not even my field. I know that the carbon-based life forms that we interact with here are made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And I know that there's no amount of force on Earth where a jet can hit a wall in the Pentagon and just vaporize. So we're expected to believe this Charlie Brown story. I think these people just eat birthday cake and just laugh at how stupid they think people are, while they kill, innocent people. Another thing is people say, the Americans are doing it. No, it's not. It's the foreign policy people doing this. And right now, recent polls that have come across me show 50% of the United States supports Palestine. Supports that they have the right to live. They have the right to be in their country with peace. They have the right to pursue their potential. Despite the fact that they're poor, they have the right to eat. They have the right. And there's this whole thing about Hamas, October 7th. Now there's a whole challenge of that official story. So Israeli soldier border guard says that the security is so tight on Gaza Strip. It's basically an open air prison. We've been heard that term a lot. The security is tight. If a moth goes by, we'll know about it. And they said for all these troops to come, these Hamas to come and kill all these people, is staged, according to an Israeli soldier. And 5,000 Israelis protested the actions of the Netanyahu and these USSR non-ethnic Abrahamic people. And they were jailed. And rabbis are protesting this, and they're protesting.
The thing about all of that is that that we could deep dive into that for hours, but
Exactly.
You're right. There's a lot of question marks about a whole lot of things, especially coming from the United States, going back decades, and that's a whole nother thing. But we're coming up on the end of our time here, so I'm gonna kind of close out with pulling your book up again. And we're going to let everybody know that, hey, once again, here's the book. Go find it on Amazon if you like poetry. This is some very famous poetry. And as he said, it's a national bestseller now. So that should entice you even more to go see it. Go pick it up.
And Terry, I want to emphasize that it's a lighthearted book. Does not talk about politics. Not talk about.
I actually read the book, so I read the poems. There's not a shred of politics in it at all.
Thank you.
So if you want to get away from all the bad things, pick this up. Take I think I spent a good couple hours here reading through it. So
Terry,
it's highly recommended.
And I just want to emphasize that, to recap, that I stand for world peace between Muslims, Christians, and Jews. I stand with Torah observant Jews like Rabbi Jacob West. I stand with Dr. Cornel West, even though he's so maligned because he's African American, meaning the creation of God and a child of Adam and Eve. He's an intellectual par excellence. I'm not even close to where he is intellectually, and I stand with these peace loving people. And this two-party system is rigged. AIPAC swept the primaries, meaning Israel swept the primaries. We don't know what's going to happen in the election. It's just so dangerous you know, it's a mess. And so hopefully this book will allow people an escape, a natural high. Don't do
There you go.
drugs.
There you go.
Read Love Poems by ASM Esquire.
Right. There you go. Well, listen, I appreciate you coming on the show again and talking about your book and all the other things that's going on around the world. Stuff that I talk about almost every week. So I appreciate it. I'm glad we got a chance to do it again. So, are you doing anything for the future?
Yes. So I'm also writing a book on that I've shared with a lot of people on devices and spying and automating the spies. So
Ah,
um, a lot of devices, and I named the devices and how they spy on people and why it's a problem. 17 million data points are collected on a child by the time they're, I believe, 17 years old, with their location, their friends, and why that's a problem. And so I'm working on that. I don't expect that anytime soon. I'm also uh, I wrote a book on um, something else. I don't want to say too much, but
okay.
keep you informed in the loop. I'm writing a book on classical astrology.
Hmm.
So like the books of Mashallah, who's a Jewish Muslim, what we know, and Abu Sal Tastari, Abu Mashhar, and the people say Johannes Kepler. I've read everything of Johannes Kepler, and he's not really. He doesn't talk too much about astrology. He's more an astronomer. He's more like
Yeah,
scientific. But anyway, so don't expect that anytime soon either.
it's okay. At least you're doing something. That's good.
Yeah. So I actually
And
retired.
as far as your other book on devices, you might want to include a chapter on putting PETN inside walkie-talkies and pagers.
Ah,
Because that's
that
a hot topic right now.
I like it a lot. Yeah, that's a whole podcast. We could have a lot of fun with that one. Your
Yeah,
viewers would love this one.
yeah. I mean, that's the fact that they got away with it is scaring everybody across the world right now. So, but again, that's a whole nother animal. So listen, I appreciate you. Okay, and I'll talk to you again some other time. Just reach out to me when you get your stuff all ready to go, and we'll talk about it again.
Will do. Thank you, sir.
All right, take care now.
All right.
So I appreciate everybody tuning in. Um, we had a lot to talk about, and I'll be looking forward to talking to him again in a few months from now, or whenever he gets one of his two books out. The one about the devices sounds pretty interesting. Um, there's a lot that could be put into that one, but again, future stuff. So with that, I'll talk to you next week. Sláinte. While I still have your attention, I want to tell you about how you can support this podcast and my efforts in general. This podcast will continue to remain free to subscribe to on all the major mobile podcast apps, on my YouTube channel, Krana Biha, and for the first 30 days on my Substack page, Krana Biha, the Tree of Life at Substack.com. With that in mind, I'm asking for donations of any amount. I decided that I would rather ask for donations instead of charging subscriptions, so everyone has an opportunity to watch or listen to this podcast everywhere in the world. All I'm asking for is help in defraying the cost to produce and distribute this podcast and maintain my website. I've set up a donation tab on the Village Oak Tree webpage at rss.com and a donation page on my website at www.kranabiha.com, which are all linked to PayPal for your security. This way you can use any currency you wish from around the world, providing PayPal is available to you. Any amounts appreciated. Now, about my website. The easiest way to find it is to copy it from the background behind me if you're watching this video. If you're listening to an audio version, copy the website name from the podcast logo shown. Search for it and enjoy your visit. Lastly, I'm trying to sell some copies of my book, Fugitives in the New United States, which can be found at major book retailers around the world, such as Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Lulu. You can also buy from me direct through the bookstore page on my website. Fugitives in the New United States is available in hardcover, paperback, and digital form. Free if you're a Kindle subscriber. It's written for young adults and older, so it's safe. If this were a movie, it'd be rated PG. Look for Fugitives in the New United States at your favorite book retailer and enjoy it. If I sell enough, I'll find the time to write the second book in this series. So I want to thank you for your support, even if it's just a like and a subscribe on my social media accounts. Thank you for listening to the show today. I hope you enjoyed it and you'll return again for another episode of the Village Oak Tree. Please like and subscribe and reply on the podcast videos or the audio podcast where available. This helps with distribution around the world to anyone who may have an interest in the interviews and commentary I offer. I appreciate everyone, no matter where you are in the world, who watches or listens to these videos and podcasts. As I say goodbye this week, I wish to leave you with this Irish blessing as you go about your day. May your hand always be stretched out in friendship and never in want. Slán go foill.